Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Cybersecurity Masterclass. So, we have an amazing journey to come on today. We're going to be talking about the soft close technique. And so, we've been building up to this point. There's been so many great things that we've been talking about to this point. We did a little bit about knowing the no, which was an interesting topic where you were basically understanding the no's that you might get in conversations with customers. We back up a little bit from there. We also learned a lot about some of the strategy around talk tracks and having open conversations. But today's gonna be really fun and exciting. So thank you all for joining us. This is gonna be super fun. We're gonna be talking more about this soft close technique, which I know many of you, and I got a special surprise that I prepared just for the ones that are everyone that's joining us today and all those that watch in the future editions to come. So as we get started, we'll go ahead and queue up our presentation here. Give me just a second. All right, awesome. We're going to get moving here. And so the soft close technique, I want to preface this a little bit because, one of the big things that we think about in our, in our journey to selling cybersecurity services or products is really important to understand all of the nuances, right? We're asking customers to change a lot. We're asking, asking them for a deal. We're asking them for a lot of new things outside of just maybe potentially managed services. Maybe we've just been selling managed services this whole time. So there's a lot of conversations that are new to us and a lot of things that we're looking at. And one of the things that I want to challenge us again, as I do on every single one of our journeys, is we start at the beginning. We have to remember we come from an industry that is a jack of all trades and a master of none. But again, I want to reiterate today, we're going to embark on a journey toward becoming a master of some. And so this is no exception to the rule. We're going to dive into that today. And remember, this year I'm calling 2023 the year of education because education is our job, right? Cybersecurity is complex, but it doesn't have to be hard when we're getting started. We have to be diligent about things. And so I want to jump into this a little bit and talk about how we're going to engage to win today. I know many of you that are joining us with us that have followed us on this journey have all been so great on participating in the chat. We are going to do that later today. So for those of you that are joining us, I want to make sure that you recognize that we're going to make this fun and exciting. We're going to be so today's best question is going to win a prize. For those of you that ask good questions, make sure this is for you. We're doing this for you. So we want to make sure that you are asking the questions and we are answering them for you. Also, today's best comment in the chat, make sure we're going to turn the chat on live. Know that it is going to be streamed to everybody. So be on your best behavior, but your best comment in the chat is also going to win a prize as well. And for those of you that absolutely are engaged with this and are engaging at 100% and really commenting and chatting, again, this is a community-led effort. We want to make sure that the community is getting value out of this. Make sure that you're doing that. The most engagement today will win a shirt. So that being said, I want to get started and talk a little bit about our content. So one of the things that as we kind of come through this, we're going to go through a little bit of a recap. I want to make sure that for those of you that are joining us, maybe for the first time, and you haven't had a chance to go back and look at the previous master classes, we're going to just cover real briefly and just some initial talk tracks, initial things that we've covered over the past months that we've been doing this. So we're going to be talking about the process, planning and preparation. We're going to dive into the soft close technique. We're going to talk about steps to success. And then something very special, near and dear to my heart, where we're going to bake the whole thing all together, and we're going to be talking about the customer journey. Now, one of the big things that I want to illustrate as we're going through these points today, if you have questions about any of this stuff, feel free to reach out to us at any point in time. I know that there's a lot of ground that we cover in some of these master classes that oftentimes leave some opportunity for questions. We created a LinkedIn group specifically for those of you that have questions. So we're going to share that with you at the end of this session today. Make sure that if you have those questions and you don't ask today in the chat, it's okay. Feel free to ping us on LinkedIn or any other meaningful way. We're happy to be able to answer those questions for you. So let's pop into this real quick. And I'm curious, as we look at this, I want to do a little bit of a recap. So we've learned how to make our customers feel comfortable. That was one of the big topics. We talked about that in the previous master classes where this is an uncomfortable conversation. Generally, sitting at a business table and we're all not used to selling, one of the hardest things to do is to maintain and realize that we need to stay uncomfortable, right? And we have to become more comfortable with being uncomfortable. Sounds a little bit of a nuance, but it's important that you understand this will never really truly feel comfortable. And you have to recognize that even though you may become more and more comfortable with your talk tracks, your customers may not be comfortable with the conversation. It's different when they're learning from somebody. And so, as we think about this, we have to make sure that we're making them feel comfortable enough to make them open to the education that we're going to be presenting them. And that was something that we did in the first master class. We talked about educating them through conversation, and I think that's really important. And I think we have to focus more on that. And I promise you, if you do, you will learn and gain a lot more deals by doing just that. So we did learn our talk tracks. We learned how to find the no before we get it. And understanding the no's that you're going to get is so essential because asking yourself, all right, what no are we going to get today? It helps you build your process around that. And we'll touch on that really quickly. But most importantly, over the last couple of master classes, we've given you frameworks, 5 steps to success in each one of those things. Now, I know that many of you may have not seen all that, but today we're going to bake all that together and we're going to show you how all those steps in those individual components actually will make something really special. So we're going to jump through that today and have a conversation. But before I do, I'd like to hear from the audience. So for those of you that are joining us today, I'd love to hear, how have we pivoted our conversations to asking more questions? I want this, as we start these master classes, I challenged each of you to ask more questions around the, conversations with your customers. Instead of presenting content to them, ask more questions about it. And I'm curious, how many of you have pivoted your conversations in your talk tracks to asking more questions? Comment in the chat here because I am interested in hearing about that. And if you got any success stories about maybe you asked a specific question, remember, everybody, we're all learning together here. And that if whatever you might be asking might be effective for somebody else, feel free to share because it's very important. As a community-led effort, I do believe that we can all learn from each other. So if you got some questions that you've been asking, things that you've been talking to your customers about, maybe some questions you took from the previous sessions, share them here in the chat. Love the comments that are coming in. Thanks for that, you guys. So the goal here is to make our customers and clients feel comfortable. Again, back to the beginning. We need to make sure that we address their concerns and not make concerns an addressable point. We covered this in the last, as a little bit of a recap. But remember, it's our job to educate them and build trust and gain rapport. Again, asking the questions, and I love this, letting the customer talk, they will eventually tell you what they need, want, and expect. Oh, you're definitely queuing me up because this is a wonderful point. It's interesting here, and again, I think my picture may be overlaying on top of this, but we have our work cut out for us because 19% of customers trust salespeople. Now, not that view. I don't know. It may not work. But if you think about the 19% of customers that trust salespeople, it's like, one, I don't really care about that. Keep in mind, anytime you're positioning a product or service to a customer, you're considered a salesperson. So if there's 19% of them that trust us, we got a long road to go, right? And so it's really interesting to think about that stat. And thank you, HubSpot. That was something they released at the end of 2022 as a stat for the year. I thought that was quite interesting that that's such a huge road to climb. And for those of us that aren't natural salespeople, that we don't come from a sales background, we're entrepreneurs that were technical, and now we're trying to foray into presenting value and delivering features, benefits, and outcomes. That can seem daunting, right? And that can seem a little concerning that we have to overcome that much of an opportunity. But that's okay. So as an additional recap, obviously our process for success has been the 5 steps. right? So we go back to our talk tracks. We had 5 steps to success. I'll show you that a little bit later. But here we talked about this in knowing the no. Step one is understanding the customer needs. And I think, Jeff, you said it pretty good here. We definitely have that opportunity as well. And Degley, you're putting in a prac later this week during a meeting scheduled with a client that has been reluctant to invest in their cybersecurity. Love it. Ask more questions. You'll see some results. Understanding the customer needs. Again, recap. Number 2 was identifying their budget and their spending. So many people have a hard time with this one. And I had this conversation with somebody else the other day. They were like, well, I don't really like to ask people about how much money they're spending. And it's like, again, back to knowing the no. If this is more money than they are spending already, then I'm asking them to spend money that they didn't allot for this. And I know that a lot of the times this cybersecurity initiative that we're talking about is money that they have all decided not to either spend money on, or it's been something they've been reluctant to do. So clarifying their budget for spending, this is going to be an interesting one, right? There's a lot of things that build up to that. And so we're going to cover that in a little bit more, but I want to make sure that we pay attention to making sure that they have funding for it, because the no you might get is like, Juan, I don't buy cybersecurity services now. Why would I want it now? Like, the value conversation that we have to have is much different than if they're already paying for cybersecurity services. And one of the questions I love to ask is, who do you guys think is easier to sell to? Somebody that's never had it before, or somebody that's already paying for it through somebody else? And it's interesting, the conversation that I'll get back. A lot of people will say, Juan, I think it's the person that's never bought it before. I'm like, that's the hardest customer to sell to, because I'm asking you to spend more than zero. You didn't have an expense before I walked in the door, and now I'm telling you to spend more money with me. So it's often a difficult conversation for those greenfield opportunities that have never had a foray into the expense of cybersecurity services. Same thing on the managed services side, but so much more on cybersecurity, because the value has to be much different. But that's where clarifying the pain really comes in, is understanding how is this important to them, and what's the confirming their intent, or how serious are they. Step 4, oftentimes as providers, we don't often ask for the deal. I mentioned that in know the no. That's one of that we just leave on the table, and we leave it to chance and hope that they're going to say, what's the next step? That's a danger zone, right? So we want to make sure we engineer past that. What we're going to talk about today is really making sure that we go through step 1 through 5, discussing how your offering meets their needs in step 5, their needs, and how that equals their success. That is something we'll cover in another session, which will be coming later in the year, which is outcomes, the outcome. There's a lot that's baked into that, but today we're going to talk about a lot of these processes and how I build them together. So we're going to bake a little bit of a cake. Looks like here we find here in East Tennessee, most SMBs are unsophisticated users. They require a lot of education before we move them down the path to purchase cyber. 100%. Year 2023 is the year of education for ourselves and for our customers. So I love where you're going with that. I absolutely agree 100%. That is our primary objective, is to educate that customer. So as we talk about this soft close technique, and we understand some of the processes and how we got here, we talked about engineering for the yes. I'm going to give this to you brass tacks. It's all about the process. There is no difference between how you run your managed services business and how you present your cybersecurity stack to your customer. It's about process. Customers will buy something that they can see works. Now, when I was building my managed services practice, one of the big things I wanted to do was take intangible and make it tangible. The only way I could truly do that is through constant education about the process, about the product, about the procedure, and about the delivery. And then measuring their satisfaction along the way with what we were delivering. And so today we're going to talk about the soft close technique is a process. Now, I'm not being flippant there. I mean that by every sense of the imagination. It is the process in which you use to actively engineer the close of your customer. It's everything we've been talking to this point. All of them are processes: how I interact with the customer, how I interact with talk tracks, how I follow up. Every single piece of the puzzle, it's the process. And so when I say that, what I mean by the process is we have to engineer for the close. Now, we talked about talk tracks. Remember early on when we start off our conversation, our goal is to help them understand why cybersecurity protection is important. I don't want to cram it down their throat. I don't want to make them afraid of it. I don't want to instill fear. Remember, we talked about fear sells, or if it doesn't. It was important for us to make sure that they understand it's important to their business, right? I need you to understand and I need you to adopt the notion that this is an important thing for the operation of my business, my life, my livelihood, my family, right? These need to be made apparent to them. Not, if you don't do this, then here is the repercussion. We also talked about the risk taker. The more that you threaten me with something, the more that I may be want to actually go down that path as a challenge. Like, well, I'm going to just wait here, Juan, until it happens to me now at this point, because we've heard some of that, right? We want to ask questions, and we want to only ask the questions that we have answers to. Now, I keep saying that on purpose. There's a really, really, really important fact around why I'm saying that. When I say only ask the questions that you have answers to, is because when we're asking questions we don't have answers to, it leads to things that could potentially be outside of what we have the ability to do. Now, when I say ask questions you have answers to, it's ask questions that lead to a part of a process that you can solve. I'm going to show you a little bit about that here in a minute, but the goal again is to help them understand that you have the answers to the problems. Most importantly, you have a program that will help them to find success. And that's really what the important piece of this puzzle is. Again, an interesting stat was asking questions about your buyer's goals and pain points leads to better sales success. Now, this is from Gong. Thank you, Gong 2022. This isn't just in our industry. This isn't just in cybersecurity sales. This isn't just in managed services. This is across the board. The more engaged we have the customer, the more they have bought in to whatever we're talking about, the more that they're going to most likely do business or do something with us, which is our ultimate goal. So again, back to always be closing. Whenever we're creating the process, and I mean from the start, from the moment that we have a conversation with them, the soft close technique doesn't work unless you get yeses along the way. Now, when I say soft close, I'm not looking for a hard close at the end. Like, I am going to pitch you a product, and then at the end of it, I'm going to nail you to the wall with some sort of a sales tactic, or here it is. Like, you have to buy this right now. This is the way it has to be. If you don't sign this right now, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We've all been hard closed before. The soft close is the educational route. It is the process for success along the journey of education to a meaningful outcome, which is a close and a success story for the customer. Now, that is a whole process that has to start at the very beginning, right? It started when we had the conversation about talk tracks. And that is the same conversation that we have that I demonstrated for you guys here, right? We started off with a whole conversation about the flow of a conversation with the customer. For those of you that were able to grab this little takeaway, use this. It's important. It's very important that you follow some sort of cadence in regards to your program inside of your business. Now, I'm going to ask you guys in a little bit if you have a program or a process for this. Most of us may or may not. I didn't when I first had my first managed service or my first IT company. I didn't have a process to have a conversation. I didn't have a process that was engineered to close. Now, the second time around, I did, right? And that's why I had so much success with it. I was able to teach that process. I was able to educate the sales teams on those processes. We were able to look at things in a much different light. We had information and data around whether or not that was working or not. We were able to look at all these different points. And this is where it's important to look at here, in this quick summation scenario, when you change your conversation to line up with your process, it's important that you line it up appropriately. Again, back to asking questions you want answers to. Let's go through this a little bit, right? So, for those of you that have other questions too that you've been asking, please keep continuing and posting them in the chat. These are great. So, number one, tell me about your business, right? Opening statement. It's interesting. Most of us oftentimes will jump into about us. Hold on. Pause for a second. We learned that in the first one. Let's not talk too much about who we are. Let's learn more about them. This is an interview, right? I want to know if this customer is the right fit for me, and I want to know if I'm the right fit for them. The knowing the know, the first know. Yes, absolutely. Easy as ABC. It sounds good as a song, but it takes practice to ask for the sale. You're 100% right. So tell me about your business is the first one. Number two, how are you using technology today? Now, there's an important reason you want to ask this question because I want to understand how important is technology to them. Is it a utility? Should it always work? Is it always on? Or do you actually use it as a business tool or some sort of competitive advantage in your organization? And then lead to some conversation. We work with companies to help them make technology a strategic advantage and ensure that they have a strategic plan to make the best use of it. Is that appealing to you? Again, I'm describing my product, my program at that point. This is what I want you to do is I want you to think about your conversation. What is your product? And then how do you describe that back to your customer in this response, right? Here is the ingest of what you just said, and here is my solution to that problem. This is how I deal with that. What are some of the technologies that are working for you, and what are some of the ones that are not? Right? I want to understand more about that customer. What is their pain point? Again, back to the qualifying, right? That was step 2. Number 3, we work with companies like yours. We also see all kinds of issues. Some of the things that we solve for are X. Right? So if you're positioning a cybersecurity product, here's the solution. This is what we work with. This is how this solves the pain that is specific to your program, your product, or your company, or your problem in your company, excuse me. Number 4, here we come, right? Right down home stretch. Obviously, price is important, or how important is price to you? It's important to get this question out of the gate. I oftentimes would say, hey, our pricing is X, Y, and Z. Should we continue talking or should we stay friends? You want to get to the know just as fast with yourself and whether or not this is the right customer for you, because if they're not interested in paying for the services that you offer, don't make the critical mistake by bargaining your value to win a deal. And that's where we often learn some lessons in the long term, whether there's, I've basically said I was going to do something for a certain price, and I really can't afford to do that because it's too expensive. Although we want to do the right thing, you want to make sure that they're actually paying for the program or products and services and value that you are offering. So make sure that you have a good conversation around that. One place the most customers are most concerned about is cybersecurity. Is that a concern for you as well? Open-ended? I know it is. I'm not really asking the question. I kind of already know the answer to that question. It's super important. Now, is it important to you? And how much education do I have to teach you? And again, this is back to some of the recap from the beginning, but one of the final questions is asking for the deal. It sounds like we're a good fit here. Would it make sense for us to bring you? It makes sense for us to bring you on as a customer, our onboarding, and then spell out your program. Our onboarding takes 30 days. We want to make sure to plan accordingly for a smooth transition without disruption. Ask for the deal. Now, if you can look through the psychology of the way this is framed up, I did this on purpose so that you could get a really quick view on a soft close. Now, I'm asking some questions. Generally, most of them are going to result in some sort of a yes or a meaningful outcome. I have a response to those so that we can answer them. But at the end of it, I know I got a good qualified customer here, and I know I have something that is interesting to them because they want to do business with me and I want to do business with them, right? They can afford it. I want to help them. Let's talk about it. So again, the scenario here is engineering for it. And I'm curious, for those of you that are out there with me joining today, do you guys have a process that you can illustrate to your customer in any form right now? Like, do you have, when you're getting ready to present a cybersecurity product, is there a process that you can illustrate start to finish? Here's how it starts. and here's how it ends. Here's what you should expect. Now, if you're like me, when I first started off, you may not have one, and then that's okay because that's fine. The whole process here, and the reason that I asked this question is because if this is of value, this is something that we worked on to provide for you today, and I'm going to share that is a templated process. So for those of you that join us on the LinkedIn group, we'll be working on this here into the future. So if again you got a process, tell me a little bit about your process. I'd love to hear if you could spell it out, maybe a couple bullet points of what's working for you. I think it'd be meaningful for everyone else as a share here. So as we answer that question, back to the program. The program is the plan. Our program is designed to protect you from something. Is this important to you? Now, when I ask if you have a plan, I've asked a question. The customer immediately says, how? Right? That's in their mind, whether they say it out loud or not. They're going to ask how, and that's a really dangerous place to be if you don't answer it, right? And you have to spell it out and make it measurable so that you can show progress in that exact moment. Don't leave this open to conversation. Close this conversation with a deliverable. One of the things that you can do is you can actually demonstrate those processes or that program, or even a quick wireframe of here's how we do it. I think show and tell is really important. People learn through a number of different ways, whether it's, through audio, whether it's, some sort of a visual depiction, or they learn through some sort of creative, or they learn through reading. There's a number of different ways people learn. But I often found that as I would use illustrated diagrams of our process on here's exactly how this goes, does this sound good to you? So many customers would come back and say, I love that. I can see exactly where I'm going to go on this. And I feel like that's a strong opportunity for us. I've never seen anything like that. So thank you for showing that to me. Now I say this, ask questions you want answers to so that you have answers to them. You have to answer those questions. You can answer them verbally, but you can also answer them logically and also through imagery and using some sort of diagram of your process, like here's exactly how we do it, or talk through the process or relate back to something inside of your program that's an actual manageable, measurable piece that shows them that level of success or what they're going to be being delivered. And so here's another interesting stat that I wanted to share. And here it is, right? Somebody mentioned it a little bit earlier. Buyers want things, and we have to make sure that we recognize that those things are things they want. They don't necessarily want us to talk tech to them. 69% of buyers say that they want people to listen to their needs. That's a big one, right? So when we're asking questions, we should be asking the questions that people want to be asked, right? Again, if we're going back to soft close, I need to cater to the conversation that they want to have, not the conversation that I feel comfortable with. That may be very technical. That may be very left field or right field. And it may be, red team, blue team. I'm not exactly sure what conversations we want to have with them, but the ones that they want to have are the ones that listen to their needs. 61% of them say, don't be pushy and give me relevant information. Here's another one, right? 51% of customers that want salespeople to respond in a timely manner. Now, these are huge. And again, thanks HubSpot for that meaningful stat. Again, it was their end of the year report for 2022 based on customer buying habits of technology. These are big, right? These are numbers that aren't relevant. I'm sure many of you that are out there it sounds like a good group of you here in the chat have found those nuances of customers that really want to have conversations that are surrounding them. Now, oftentimes we come together, we put together a deck and we have something that we want to present to them and we want to tell them all about it because we're really excited. Hold on a second there. It's okay if you're going to do it down the road and you have a reason to do it and you're going to answer it and you're going to spell out like this elaborate plan on how they're going to be successful. That's a wonderful place to do it. Up front, first things first, you want to make sure that you're building that rapport. Again, back to the beginning. So now that we know this to be a fact, that customers are asking us to do something differently, let's do it. Let's have a good conversation. Let's talk about it, but let's make it measurable. It's really important for us to make sure that after we've answered the question, that we expand upon that a little bit. Let's keep the conversation going here. Let's not make it just Q&A. Let's give it Q, A, and an outcome. We're going to dive into outcomes a lot more later, but one of the meaningful things people want as part of a plan is they want an outcome. They want to know how my business is going to be impacted by this particular scenario. If I'm illustrating a pain point, that means that I have a problem. If you're going to solve my problem, I not only need to hear you say it, because I've heard a lot of people come up in my office and tell me they're going to solve a problem. I need to see relevant information about how you're going to do that. So, one of the great ways to do it is make it measurable. Our process will take 30 days to implement, at which time we will be having bi-weekly meetings to discuss the following: implementation, risk remediation, exposure, opportunities, timelines, education. These are meaningful measurables. These are the points where the rubber meets the road. This is exactly where I have a measurable that I can actually measure and say, here's how this works. Here's the schedule of things that we're going to be doing during this time. Here's what you should expect from us on this measurable, meaning amount of time. One of the things here, and again, I think my photo is over the top of this, but a pro tip here is engage them from the beginning by asking, can you commit to being a part of regular meetings about your business health? I remember asking this on a number of different calls whenever I felt like there was some sort of a blasé approach to cybersecurity in my business or the conversation we're having. It's like, if this isn't really important to you, then this is probably not the right customer for me. Just brass tacks, right? Don't waste your time on people that are not interested in what product or value you're bringing to light. Trust me, in the long run, you'll end up being happier. Your employees will be happier. Make sure that you have people that want to do business with you. It's going to make it a lot easier. But again, back to making this measurable, this is where it's about the soft close, right? Because if I've asked you a question, now I've given you a response. And by the way, now I'm going to show you exactly how I'm going to take that to the next level and deliver on that response is all that matters to them. The reason I'm interviewing other MSPs or MSSPs or looking for other cybersecurity services from somebody else is because I don't really feel like the company that I'm doing business with has the right product or service. Maybe it's not the right price. Maybe I don't understand the value. There's 1,000 different reasons why. When you execute on this in this way, you will find that you have a lot more traction than you did before. And again, back to the process, right? This isn't anything different than we were talking about before, right? It's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But now all I'm doing is making sure that those steps along the way are measurable, right? So if you have a problem and I've asked a question about it and you gave me a response, now I have a way to solve for it in a much more meaningful way. Now, here's something different that I would challenge you all to do is, I don't know how many of you have a process for a customer journey, but I want to ask you all in the chat here today, how many of you have mapped your customer journey? Just give me a yes or no, or I'm in process of doing it. The reason that I ask this question is oftentimes I talk about this as one of the greatest success of building a high growth company in a managed services realm was that I needed to understand how the quarter went in and how the dollar came out. Now, I used to use the analogy of a slot machine. The reason that I use that is because there's a number of combinations that can happen in the time that somebody pulls the handle. But the process is that as a business owner, I needed to understand how to engineer to make money. I needed to know how to keep things moving in a forward momentum. I needed to know when the money was coming in based on my level of effort on the sales side. So one of the great things here, oh, look how many people in here. So many have the customer journey already mapped out on a napkin. Absolutely. I love that one. Hey, you know what? My last MSP, the plan I started was originally written on a bar table napkin. So don't don't say anything bad about a napkin because it's some of the best ideas start there. Patrick says yes. Melissa says yes. Wonderful. I'm absolutely ecstatic about that. So as we talk about this customer journey, it's interesting. So when you think about this, you have to go on the journey with your customer's thought process in mind. And you have to think about, okay, what are all the touch points that I have with this particular customer and what is their experience along the way? Now, many of us measure things as customer satisfaction surveys, or maybe we have something else on the back end. But when we're in sales and we're presenting something to a customer, there's not a whole lot of ways to measure that journey. And so, like, it's really difficult for us to think about that. I also struggled with this early on in my career to figure out, why do I keep landing up in the same place? Like, it was frustrating. I didn't quite understand it. It was very disturbing to me and I didn't get it. And so I had to figure it out. And one of the most meaningful places that I spent time on, and again, I'll challenge all of you that are here with us today, is to spend time on your customer journey. Because the important fact is, for those of you that are here, I'm sure you can allude to some of the benefits are behind it, but people buy plans, especially the ones that demonstrate success. I often speak about this, about diet plans, and why do people buy diet plans? It's because there's reasons why, right? I want to lose weight. I want to feel healthy. I want to do more things. But again, do we have a plan for success for our cybersecurity sales? Do we have a plan for success on our managed services practice, right? These are questions you have to ask yourself. And then when you think about it and you ask yourself this, it's like, oh man, I don't have a plan. Well, that might be a no that we're getting. And that might be the no that we're receiving from our customers is, I don't see myself being successful with you. And that's where I think we rush into things, right? I think that we rush in sometimes a little bit soon, but I think we do things because we're just needing to hurry up. I know as a young entrepreneur, one of the things is I really need to figure out how to make my mortgage payment this month. I really need to figure out how to pay payroll this month for my employees. And I got in a rush and I did things that really weren't focused, and it wasn't really very valuable for myself, my self health, my time, our well being, the company's well being, the employees' well being, everyone's well being. You got a lot of people to take care of. When we rush, we do things and make mistakes, and oftentimes we overlook the simple things. But only 2% of sales happen during the first point of contact. And this is interesting because as a young entrepreneur, I often thought that when I walked into an office, I should close every single deal. This is a lot of the no session that we talked about. Sometimes it's not the right customer for us. There's a lot of things that go into this. So you have to take your time and make sure that you have built in a process for success so that you can understand the first conversation, second conversation. There may be a number of conversations. You can streamline those things, but you got to really understand how you put the quarter in and how that dollar comes out. Where do you make your investment and what's the return on it for you? And that has to be the same for your customers. And I know a lot of this happens on the other end of the stick where, failing to follow up, and you can miss out on 98% of your sales as well. Because sometimes, again, we heard that in no the last time. Most customers say no up to 4 times. Now, I know that sounds a little frustrating because I know we want a magic wand and we want to be able to wave it and say, poof, deal done, which I absolutely love too. Don't get me wrong. I love first call closes. Like, that's my favorite deal in the world, but that's not reality. And that's not that there were so many things that went into that. And on the reverse side of that, it's important for you to understand, if you got that opportunity and you saw something close that fast, how did it close that fast? And let's take a look at that benchmark and take a look back at this customer journey. So here's where it gets real. And we're going to jump into this. So I know that we've been kind of on the lower echelon of understanding and kind of getting our feet wet on just kind of wading into this pool. We're going to dive a little bit deeper here. And this is where I want to be very serious about some of the stuff that we're talking about today, because follow up is a real thing. If you don't do it right, you may as well stop. And I'll be honest with you right now. If you have a QBR or TBR process, a technology business review process, make sure that you start as soon as you're having the conversation. Use that as your strategy from the moment you walked in the door. Don't come into the door telling the customer that I have one. Walk me on the journey. The most interesting note I used to have was the conversation with my salespeople. For those with us last time, I used to say, if you walked out with a no, it's probably because you brought it with you. And that's most likely because we didn't do something right? We didn't understand what we're going into. Maybe we were just in a hurry. We ran into it. We didn't think much about it. We threw something on the table and said, do you want to buy it? That's dangerous to do. I also call that burning the lead, because that first interaction that they had with you, they were interested in the products and services that you had. They didn't take the call because they didn't want it. You found what we call education. And now I often say use a deal autopsy spreadsheet or something along those lines so that you can go back and look at how did this deal not transpire. But if you have a QBR and TBR process, use that to your advantage. You're a little bit ahead of the curve if you have one of those, because you understand some of the strategy. Now use that strategy as a template for your program delivery over time, so the customer understands that I have a plan that we're going to work on together. It's really easy to do, and I think that that's really meaningful. If we don't have a planner that's measurable, we need to go back to the drawing board. Again, remember, the no you're going to get here is no, I don't think I see success with you. Flat out. I know it hurts to hear, and I know many of you that are with us today, and this is why I said it gets real here, that you turn up the temperature on the reality of the situation. If I don't have a plan for a customer's success, they're probably going to say, I don't see myself being successful with you, because I haven't, I may have heard a few things, but I don't see it. Like, show it to me. Like, I need to see it. Like, I've been told a lot of things in my life, so I need you to show me now. And make sure that your plan is real and you can clearly articulate it. That was one of the things that I would often catch people doing, and I still do today as I help MSPs have conversations. We say a lot of things. We put a lot of things on a piece of paper, but we don't have a system internally that we actually can make that happen. And that's where you want to be very careful of overcommitting and under-delivering. We all have felt that in the past, where I was sold something and I don't feel like I got the relevant value out of it. This is that moment where we need to be cognizant of it. So whatever we're positioning, make sure that you're clearly about what it can do, how you can do it, what are the meaningful ways and timelines we can implement it, and the way that we can deliver, and that we're going to measure it along the way to make sure that it's actually successful for you and for us. One of the interesting stats here was acquiring a new customer costs 5 to 25 times more than keeping an existing customer. That's the Harvard Business Review stat for sales for 2022. Oftentimes, a lot of MSPs, a lot of business owners, technology solution providers, don't look inside. We're always looking external to things. If you have a meaningful process, it's really fun to test out on your existing customers and go to them and say, hey, we got this great new process we're going to implement, and we're going to start doing these things with you over this period of time. And we're going to try to move you from stagnation to innovation, right? So when you think about that, you don't have to go out and find new customers to have this conversation with. Now, for some of you that are new, that are coming in that may not have any customers right now, start off fresh. Make sure you understand what this looks like. If you want to, and you want to benchmark, or you want to kind of ask some questions, jump over to our LinkedIn Cybersecurity Masterclass share group. A lot of these wonderful people here are there, and we would love to help you out along that journey. So the process for success, let's go back. So the first version that we talked about, that's our email communicate, our conversation with our customers. Now, this 5-step process that we came up with, again, back to the beginning, was defining your strategy to ensure your contracts and sales materials support your offering. we're going to talk about this. I'm going to be doing a live masterclass on stage at IOTSA this year, and we're going to be talking about the conversion of MSP to MSSP and some of the things that you need to be thinking about. Now, this is really, really interesting for us to take a look at because there's so many things as a business owner that we don't have time to look at. Again, we're rushing into the sale because we really need to make it happen. But we also need to pause for a moment, and we actually need to say, we need to define the strategy in which we're going to make that happen. I know it takes time. I know it does, but trust me, you can make it happen. Don't put all the weight on your shoulders. Use your team. Let's look at this holistically. Let's go through our customer journey. Let's map this thing out. Number two, once we've kind of got our strategy and our program identified, make sure you're preparing emails that are relevant to cybersecurity and to begin sending them out for an outreach a week or a month in advance. If you're positioning a new customer, send them this information in front of your meeting. Let's take some of the questions off of the deal table so that they understand that we're professionals in this realm. Educate them from the moment that you even think about doing business with them and saying, hey, before we get started on our conversation, I'm going to send you some relevant information so that you can learn a little bit about us and our process so that when we get to the conversation with you, you have a good idea of how it is we do business and whether or not you like that kind of business or not. It's really meaningful to open the door to help them understand more from the onset. So if you don't have some of those templates or some of that email, I know there's a lot of vendors that are out there. Again, HacWare, we're a vendor that does that. We produce a lot of content that is, for you to use. So please feel free to use that. Some of the videos, shorts, that type of stuff. Feel free to use it at your opportunity and at your need. And number three, again, back to the education. We heard that in the chat earlier, and we got a lot of great people commenting here. Heather, great stuff. Love that idea too. And I like what you're doing as well in your organization. Tiffany, it's good to see you. Mike, farming is easier than hunting if you're doing it right. Mike, I love what you just said. I want to try to turn this whole conversation around here in a minute to making farming all the conversations we ever have. Right. And that's where I think it's really, really interesting because the more we farm, I used to get asked by salespeople all the time, if you're going to cold call, how would you do it? And I said, I wouldn't. It's really hard. I'd love to educate people on the opportunities. And then at that point in time, if they want to do business with us, they will. Right. And cybersecurity, the lucky part for all of us here today is that everybody needs it. When I first started my first IT company, the reason I did it was because I knew everyone needed technology, right? It was shooting fish in a barrel. It's the same thing now. It's a land grab. And now it's whether or not I feel confident that you have the products, services, and procedures and plan to deliver success. You guys got the product, you got the procedures, you got the staff, you got what you need to make it happen. Now just iron out the plan. So number 4 is take your time. Not everyone's going to come running. Again, hold on a second, slow down. Remember that it takes time to gain trust. And number 5 is once you're ready to commit a customer, make sure that you execute and hold yourself accountable. I talked about that the last time. For those of you that may not have a strategy, again, it looks like I might be cutting this off. We'll share the resources. We'll reach out to every single one of you guys and send the resources because I apologize. It's stepping over this on the bottom. In the MSP Owner's Handbook, which I co-wrote with Marty Stockman, there's a QBR resource in there that helps you frame up some of that strategy. So for those of you that may not have a QBR program, feel free to go grab that. The MSPOwnersHandbook.com. You can download that resource. It's free of charge. There's nothing to it. But it's important to have some sort of a strategy to talk to your customer about. We have everything we need. We just mentioned that. All we need to do is show them the plan for their success. And so as we have this conversation, I want to give you something, and to all of you that have joined us and been so kind following us along, I want to give you something that's really, really important. I'm going to give you a draft customer journey. And this is based on all the conversations that we have, all of the steps, all built into one customer journey so that you can see what a possible quarter in and a dollar out looks like. Now, I can't give you the deal as much as I'd love to. I love all of you, but I can't give you the deal because I don't have a deal to give you. But this will at least give you a template or an idea of a plan that you might be able to put together on your side. So this is super cool. I spent a lot of time putting this together specifically for you. This is 100% new. This has never been released anywhere else but here today. So congratulations to all of you that are here. I can't wait to give this to you because this is a culmination of all of the master classes, all the steps, all baked together with all of the advice. And I'm really excited to be able to provide that for all of you. Now, this thing does go a little further than we've come to this point. Obviously, following up is one of the big things that we're going to be doing. And the strategy call, right? So we're going to be moving on to two different pieces that is steps 5 and 6 here in the future. But I wanted to preface this today because I feel like you've come to a place where a lot of you are asking, awesome, Juan, I love all this. It's a lot to put together. There's a lot of things I need to do. Again, back to I'm busy, and I get that. We're all trying to run businesses. Can I get it condensed? And so for all of you that are here, this is the one thing. And I want to illustrate a couple of things, right? So back everything we've talked about to this point, this is the soft close technique. It is everything we've talked about to this point, and it is the soft close because we're getting yeses all along the way. The more you engage with them early on in the pre-meeting by sending out content, the more they engage with that is the more education you're providing them. When you get to your first meeting, then you have the opportunity to ask the questions, right? And you get into your findings meeting for those of you that do findings and recommendations or do assessments. How do I do those things? And what do I do at the closing meeting? These are all the tactics that we've talked about to this point. And then onboarding, the measurables. How do I do it? What are the things that I need to be doing and again, this goes back to everything we're doing, whether you're selling a cybersecurity product or you're selling managed services. These are the essential pieces that are relevant to customers in the managed services technology solution provider space. So that being said, I want to make sure that you guys get access to those things. We will make sure to follow up with you because that's exactly what we're teaching here. We're going to make sure that you get how we get there and strategizing and minimizing your risk. We covered this the last time, and then planning for success. Again, those are the breakout pieces of all of the parts that we have going on within that. We want to make sure you get some of the new resources, that QBR resource and your customer journey map, so that you guys can start diving into your own customer journeys. I cannot wait to see what you guys create because I know it's going to be amazing. And then please do me a favor, jump over to that LinkedIn group and share with us. We want to make sure that this is a community-led effort. You guys, everyone that's joining here, the reason that I'm doing this is because this is a lot of lessons that I learned. These are things that work, ways that you can actually be successful in your own business. And we would love for you to pop over and be part of this with us. So in summary, as we come in here for the close, take your time and plan to win. I know that sounds hard. It's like, Juan, I don't wake up every morning planning to fail. No, you don't. But take your time in building a process so that when you get to that customer meeting, you can win every single time. Take a moment to learn from every deal that you do and take something back from it and figure out, what did I do wrong or what did I do different? How can I make that different? And make sure that you're building for success. I really, really, really am excited about this. I cannot wait to see how many of you are super successful this year. And I want you to follow up with us on the 24th. We're going to be talking about the art of the follow-up. Trust me, we're going to dive into how to follow up, some of the meaningful ways. We're going to have some follow-up emails. We're going to have some templates. We're going to have things that you can use to follow up, some tactics, tips, and tricks that will be successful for you in your business. I want to say thank you for all of you that have joined us today. It's an amazing opportunity for us to provide this to you, and I am so thankful that you find value in this. Thank you for all the wonderful comments, and know there will be some winners announced today for all of you that asked good questions, that engaged, and also put your best foot forward this year. So cheers to a happy 2023 to all of you. Happy New Year's, and to all your great success. Until we see you on the 24th, we're signing off for now. Thanks, everybody.